Hi everyone, Kim Sealing-Smith here. I had so much fun last week filming last week's Ignite Bites that I thought I'd do it again. And this week I'm going to be talking about something I never talk about: employee incentives. Now, you know that I cover the entire span of the employee life cycle, from how to source that really high performing top talent, typically passive job seekers that you have to go after proactively instead of reactively, to interviewing so that you don't interview Dr. Jekyll and have Mr. Hyde walk through the door the first day of work, to then onboarding candidates, and finally, once you get them on board, how to motivate, engage, retain, and drive their performance. Do performance management. And ditch your annual performance reviews, those antiquated things that nobody likes and that don't work. But the one thing that I don't ever talk about is pay and benefits. And that's probably because I'm a failed accountant. I've never been good with numbers, and I certainly wasn't good with numbers as an accountant, so I've steered clear of them. Now, luckily, I fell into recruitment in 1994, and this story comes from the late 90s when I was managing a group of salespeople. And the reason why I decided to talk about this today is that yesterday I was doing not one but two strategy sessions for two very different women within two very different organizations. One was talking about how to source and hire staff, and the other, we were talking about how to ditch their annual performance reviews. But the same question came up, which was odd since I never talk about this. And the question was, what would you recommend as a top tip in incentivizing employees when you don't have a lot of money? And at first I started to say, well, I don't talk about pay and benefits or incentives. But then I thought, you know what? I actually have a really good story from back in the late 90s when I was managing this office. It was Austin, Texas, and I had taken over the office. It was a turnaround situation. The office was doing okay, but not overly great. And through really hard work on the part of my team, we started really kicking some goals and hitting some great numbers, and I wanted to incentivize them. Now, being recruiters and therefore salespeople, they were paid primarily on base salary plus bonus. So I had very little impact on their pay, and in fact had very little budget for anything else like movie tickets or gift certificates or anything like that. So I thought, okay, what can I do that's very high value to the staff and low cost to us? In fact, I think I ended up paying for what I ended up purchasing, and only was out of pocket for about $15 or $20. Then, as now, one of the most highly prized benefits is flexibility and time off. So I thought, okay, well, how could I develop a time off scheme? So as long as they were hitting their goals and making their numbers, I could give them time off. But how could I make it fun? And how could I reward them for doing an extra special good job? So I came up with this harebrained scheme. At least I thought it was harebrained at first, but it turned out to be genius. I went to a local gem shop and bought some really, those really pretty polished rocks. I bought some polished rocks of all different sizes and shapes and colors, and I took them back to the office and I said, right, now whenever I or anyone else catches somebody doing something right, I want them to be rewarded with a rock. And one rock equals 1 hour of time off. And so they would nominate their peers and I would approve it, or I would catch somebody doing something right. And I would either give them the rock in front of the whole office and say, hey, you really rocked whatever it was. Or if they didn't like public shows of appreciation, I'd write them a little note with I rock on the front of it and a little explanation thanking them or acknowledging what they did. And then they would get the rock. Now they could, as I said, turn the rock in for 1 hour of time off. But what I didn't expect is that they started competing with each other to who could accumulate the most rocks. They had their little rock piles sitting on their desks. It became such a fun little competition. And yes, they certainly turned in rocks for hours off, but rarely would they turn it. They could turn in up to 1 day, up to 8 hours for one day, or 8 rocks for 1 day. But rarely did that happen because they didn't want to give up their rocks. It was so much fun and so effective. So I thought, well, that came up not once but twice yesterday. The universe is telling me something, so I thought I'd pass it along to you guys. I hope you find this valuable. as always. So that's it for this week. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much.